Hey there, Helen and Dave here to talk about one of the books we love. So, what did you bring today?
The Knowledge Illusion by Sloman and Phillip Fernbach, Why We Never Think Alone.
So, why did you bring this book? What do you love about it?
Well, this book has really got a fundamental insight in it that I think is really foundational to understanding how we think.
Yeah.
Which is that our knowledge comes from our communities, not from inside our own heads.
So, you're saying that all my knowledge comes from you?
Yeah, and others.
Yes.
But yeah, and what the fundamental insight is that you don't realize that. You think that your knowledge is just yours.
Yeah.
And so you overestimate how much you know because you associate that with the fact you can get it from someone else.
So walk me through that. How does that actually happen? What does it feel like when that happens?
Well, there's a fantastic test that they talk about in the book, which is and you can try this on people. It's kind of fun. We use it a lot in our workshops. But you ask a group of people, you ask someone to rate how well they think they understand how a toilet works. And they put it on a scale of like 1 to 7, right? So 1, no clue. 7, I'm a plumber. Or, it's some kind of technical person who understands how a toilet works. And then you ask them to explain it. And then once you do that, you ask them to rate again how they think, how well they understand a toilet works. And most of the time, and we find this is pretty much the pattern when we run this experiment, most of the time they'll rate their understanding lower once they've explained it.
Yeah.
And this is called the illusion of explanatory depth.
Love that name.
Isn't it fantastic?
It's fantastic. It's like I feel like it's going to be some sort of, fantasy, mystery, Sherlock Holmes-ish kind of era thing. Yeah. Yes. The illusion of explanatory depth.
Yeah.
Yes.
And these guys explain it brilliantly and give many examples. And what happens is that once you know about this and once you've experienced this for yourself, you come to recognize just how little you know, because having to explain something punctures this illusion, and you're left with this sense of, maybe I didn't know that as well as I thought I knew that. And what it means ultimately is that when we reason with others, we bring more intuition of our own. We think that we can reason more from our own knowledge than we actually
So
can.
where do we think all of this came from? Like, why have we evolved to have this illusion?
Well, we're social creatures, and you could argue that the greatest achievement of civilization has been able to work out problems together.
Sure.
And cultural knowledge, and the old saying of standing on the shoulders of giants. We have no choice but to trust others. We have no choice but to have knowledge from our community. And this book goes nice and broad about this as well. It's not just the community that we might know sort of intimately, like our parents getting knowledge from our friends or our parents, or it's getting knowledge from our bodies, thinking embodied knowledge, and it's also getting knowledge from machines.
Yeah.
So that was really one of the things that attracted us to talk to Steve.
Yes.
A few years ago, and have a fantastic conversation about holding knowledge in machines.
And if you want to hear Steve, we're going to put a link to our podcast episode in the notes. So look down there for a link to Artificiality. It's a great interview.
Yeah, it's a fun interview. So I think it's a really terrific, broad-based, easy to read introduction to what is really quite a humbling insight. And I think that there's an enormous amount of leadership advice right now about the need to be humble, the need to be able to change your mind, the need to be able to take on board new information, the need to be able to update our beliefs and intuitions. And what I found with the knowledge illusion is that it gives a sort of single point of insight into why that is both necessary and difficult, but also why it can be made easier by just this conscious recognition that you just don't know as much as you feel you know.
Yeah. So how do we bring this into the context when helping people make better decisions or solving complex problems. How does this illusion and the stuff that they talk about in this book flow into that process?
Well, I think that the main thing, and it's certainly an insight that I've really embraced personally, is the power of explanation.
Sure.
And I hope that one day Tania Lombroso writes a book that explains in her scholarship of why explanations are so important. Explanations are generative, they bust this illusion, they force you to confront what you don't know, which is so much better than, working on what you don't know is so much better than working on what you already know.
Sure.
To both your knowledge and your ability to update your intuitions and your beliefs. And some of our knowledge gets updated, if you like, sort of through reinforcement processes that we're not necessarily aware of, but we can change that. We can change what it is that we sort of absorb intuitively by being more open to information that is new to us. So I found this, I think I found it on like Tim Urban's blog, and he posted it as one of his sort of foundational books about how to think about how people think. And I picked it up, and that was really the start of this entire journey to better decisions, because it made us think about the power of explanations, the ones you use yourself, your own explanations, and the ones that you ask of others. Always been asking for that explanation, digging into it, recognizing that explanations have some limit, which is that we don't always have access to all of the layers behind that. It subconsciously, we just don't necessarily know sometimes why we think something. But power of explanations, the power of being less wrong, of focusing on what you don't know rather than what you do know, and recognizing that exactly the same thing is happening in other people. Where we took this with where we've taken this in our workshops, and when we talk to Steve and some of our upcoming book work that we're doing, is to think about what this means for when our knowledge is in machines. And that's really the sort of speculative part. What happens when our truth is only readable by machine?
And also when we think we know a lot more because we can easily Google it.
Yeah.
It feels like the world's knowledge is at our fingertips. So how much is that illusion carrying over to the accessibility of knowledge, or at least what we interpret as the accessibility of knowledge, just because Google serves it up to us? But how much is that illusion messing with our brains and giving us too much confidence in what we think we know?
Yeah, or counterintuitively reducing confidence because we think we can't know something unless we Google it. Yeah. And if we Google it tomorrow, it'll be different than if we Google it today. Yeah. So I think this is a very, the illusion of explanatory depth is counts when we work with machines. We should sit and always explain. That's why dashboards and charts and graphs almost need to be, the design standard on those has gone up now. Yeah. Because we have to have more explanation embedded in the design. We have to have the designer point us exactly to the piece that needs explanation and to explain that, rather than just to give us everything.
Sure.
So I think it's I think it's a profound insight. I think it's foundational in making better decisions, because you are much more aware that you feel like you know more than you do.
Excellent.
There are other really interesting little quizzes and tests and ideas in the book. Sometimes popular works of psychology can overwhelm you with so many studies that were done on 3 people in a room that had to do something in a sort of trick test, and the books become sort of overwhelmed by all these experiments. This doesn't. It points out, I think, some really interesting biases that we have and flaws that we have in our reasoning. For example, when we think diagnostically, so we reason from effect back to cause, that we make less errors than when we reason from cause to effect. And Sloman and Fernbach do a really nice job at bringing in what stories are about.
Yeah.
And how stories talk to us and play on our causal reasoning. So I think it's such a nice, easy to read. It's a fun read as well, without being sort of too overwhelmed with too much theory. It makes it really practical.
Awesome. All right. Well, the book is The Knowledge Illusion. Stephen Sloman, Phillip Fernbach, and we'll have a link to the book. If you want to learn more about how to apply this book, check out our book, Make Better Decisions. Stephen is featured in that as one of the great minds. And we also use this book quite a lot in our workshops. So if you're interested in those kinds of things as an individual or as a group, reach out. You can find more about the book, mbd.zone, and about us at getsonder.com, and shoot an email to hello@getsonder.com. Thanks.
Bye.